Welcome everyone. We've got some new faces this time, which is great, awesome. So thank you for joining. For those that are new to these calls, my name is Kyle Rosenthal, and I'm normally the anchor of the session, if you like, and then we have guests that will have come in. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I've been a Microsoft certified trainer now for about 22 years this year. And I'm also an account executive here at Skillable as well. So thank you for joining us. The idea of these sort of sessions is to kind of just have a bit of a chat about what we have going on from an instructor perspective, and some of the, in particular, we'll have a look at some of the instructor offers that we've got on. So just in case you haven't signed up for those and you're not aware of them. As well as that, it's a chance for you to be able to have a bit of a chat back to us as well. So if there's things that you want to give us some feedback on, then we're more than happy to get that from you. We do have a few folk from Skillable in the call as well. So yeah, like we'll be able to kind of pull in various different folk along those lines too. If you are on the social media sort of items, if you haven't left Twitter yet, then feel free to tag us in the in one of the social media items. We do have some prizes to give away for doing that. So make sure you do tag us in there. So we've got our Twitter handle as well as LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So if any of those are along with something you would usually use, then feel free to fill in with that. So today's agenda, the rough sort of agenda that we have, we've got some exciting news to share to start off with. So some of you might have seen this, but we'll share it anyway, just so you can see some of the exciting things that we've been up to. Then we have what we're calling a fireside chat with Rod. So Rod is one of our lab developers. He's also a CompTIA instructor as well. So Rod and I are just going to have a bit of a chat about some of the ways that the platform is being leveraged off to be able to make the instructor experience better, and of course therefore the student experience as well. And then we might also have a bit of a chat about just a bit of an instructor to instructor type chat as well. And I think at that point, we'll ask for some audience participation as well, maybe. So if there's some things that you think is a good ideas about how to deal with situations in the classroom, that's a good opportunity to be able to share some knowledge into there. Then we'll have a brief look at the Microsoft Learn integrations. Obviously, for those that are we'll look at the instructor offers that we've got. So we've got some instructor offers for VMware, AWS instructors as well as Microsoft instructors. It's just some of the things that are available for you to be able to expand out your knowledge and your reach. And then we'll look at the Microsoft Learn integration, and that's been in for a little while, and obviously if you're a Microsoft instructor, you've been dealing with that since the change that Microsoft have put in September. But just to reiterate the change, the possibilities of how we can actually do the integration within the lab within the TMS to be able to go across to the Microsoft Learn, and then conversation and some resources and links and that sort of thing into there. And I think I actually had one that I added in that I didn't put in there, which is just an update on our challenge labs as well. So I didn't actually add that to the agenda. So rightio. So our big news over the last week or so is that we're included in the training industry's 2022 top IT and technical training companies watch list. And this is the third year that we've actually made that list, so that's been quite good. It's the 10th award that we've actually got from the training industry over also since May 2020. So that's pretty big news for us. But even better than that, and obviously, we would like to toot our own horn. We've actually had quite a few of our the training companies who actually leverage our platform, who also won over that in the last awards that got put out. So congratulations to all of them. We also did have just on the notice of awards, and it's not us, but there was EC Council recognised quite a few training companies that use it, that we deal directly with, as well as some of the instructors that leverage directly off our platform as well. So again, congratulations to all of them. It's really good to see recognition coming through. So. So that's our big news for this month from an award perspective and that sort of thing. So we are quite proud of that. On top of the 25 million lab launches and that sort of thing that we've had recently for showing our performance, it's good to see some recognition from the industry as well. So we're quite proud of that. All right, now is when I bring in Rod. So Rod is, as I said, one of our lab developers. Rod, I don't know, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm putting you on your spot with doing that. I didn't say I'd ask you to introduce yourself, but I figure you know yourself better. So.
Yeah, thank you. Rod Otis. As mentioned, I'm a lab developer here at Skillable, but I'm also a CompTIA instructor. I mainly cover Security Plus, Network Plus, and Linux Plus. And, I've kind of been a member of that kind of family, if you want to call it that, for probably around 8-9 years. And I've also, as a Army reservist, I was also a trainer on that end too, based on the security sides.
Okay, right. So the reason that I asked Rod to come in today was just to kind of have a bit of a chat around some of the ways that we're putting into the platform. Some of the basically putting in methods to be able to when we're developing our labs, to ensure that as the instructor you have a flexible way to be able to work your way through content and that sort of thing. So Rod, do you have any sort of immediate thoughts around that, or things that you want to share as to what's the process, I guess?
The process really is remembering that we're actually three different things. And as instructors, one, we're instructors, two, we're still learners. And now as lab developers, we do have that capability of kind of taking a part of that, I wish this was blah, and now we can actually add that into the product that we have, as well as control it and get immediate feedback. So once we get that feedback, we can then update the changes. And that feedback can come into a lot of ways, either verbal feedback, surveys, or it can be the way that the labs are scored if we build those types of labs. And if certain groups don't score highly on certain areas, that kind of gives us feedback on what we need to kind of focus on, whether it's our fault as an instructor, we're not delivering something, in a way that someone's going to be able to accept and to use, or they're just not picking it up. So either way, it gives us a lot of feedback from that end. And a lot of the things that are built into Skillable Studio over the past year has really helped a lot, been able to see that feedback and also do monitoring of students as they kind of work through. And it's just a big help for us.
And so have you been finding that sort of as part of the feedback that we've actually got from instructors, because primarily that's sort of where we get our feedback from, has that been has it been received in a positive sort of fashion to be able to get getting that immediate feedback?
It is. And being not just an instructor here, where we see it from coming down one channel, whether it's from sales or otherwise from the CompTIA Instructor Network, we also have our channels that we actually use on that site to kind of, send feedback. And we're starting to use a lot more of the platform in around Linux Plus, Security Plus, Network Plus, and also for any other like Pen Test Plus. And the reason behind that is because it's one, I'm using the term loosely here, easy, but it's pretty intuitive how we can get in, build something, add something to it, take something away, and be very, very flexible in how we do it. And that's been the biggest compliment that and feedback that we've gotten on the Instructor Network sites, just saying how much easier it has been compared to other things. We're not just locked into a specific process. We can add something, move something, change something around on the fly. We can even do it while someone's in the middle of a course. You update it, hit the refresh button, and boom, you got the new content. So that's a lot of flexibility that others don't have.
Yeah, and I think the bonus of being able to do that, to be able to react so quickly, then means that obviously, if you're in a class and you're teaching, you're training a class, then you're at that point able to affect obviously what your students are doing, but also you're improving then what's happening for other students, like for other classes and other students as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that to me is a big bonus. Like sort of I've always been for me as an instructor, it's always been part of a community. So everything's been like a really sort of a community effort to be able to improve and to be able to make things better. We kind of all go down together, all improve together. But it's the rising tide floats all boats. So and that's sort of like we all of our individual classrooms are all really individual boats to an extent, but we kind of improve it as it goes through. And that changes those sort of updates and that sort of thing that we see in on the CompTIA side. We also have that same sort of thing come through on the Microsoft side of the fence as well. So with the Microsoft side of the fence, like we've got, if it's the mock content, then the updates go in through, say, for instance, GitHub to be able to go through. And as soon as they're published into GitHub, the next time a lab is launched, that's then pulled in, or as you rightly say, if you refresh the page, like refresh the lab environment, that'll also pull in the latest version of that GitHub as well. But then if you look at, say, for instance, our the community courseware that we've developed, that community courseware has that we can affect changes into that far faster as well, because that's a direct content that we've developed that we then have direct ownership of and management of. But it's the same sort of deal, like sort of that if you as instructors, we always notice something, right? And you go, that could be better, like that. And sometimes that's a personal thing, like sort of, I don't know, Rod, if you've had that experience where you've sat in on someone else's class and you think, I wouldn't have said it that way, and I think we've all had that experience. And just because you wouldn't have said it that way doesn't necessarily make it wrong. But for things like, say, for instance, lab content, that is something that should be accessible by everyone, as it should be understandable and should be achievable by everyone. And it's like many eyes on say, for instance, you've probably found yourself, like when you've been doing, you've created a lab, or you've created some content, and you think, great, that looks fantastic. And then the first other person that looks at it goes, Rod, you've been misspelling this particular word every time that you've typed it in, or that sort of thing. So, every other eyes on it always kind of help, or, you miss out, if we're doing those really descriptive steps of click here, click here, click here sort of thing, you miss out a step because you just do it instinctively. We get kind of too close to it. And as instructors, you are supposed to be the smartest people in the room for that particular content, or at least the subject matter expert anyway. So you are generally quite close to it. So it's the students who often recognize that something is wrong or something needs to be filled out a little bit further.
Yeah, and good thing also about Skillable Studio, and even the platform as a whole, is that we're not just bound by one type of lab. I mean, you're going to have labs that hit a lot of different levels, where they're going to be step-by-step labs or guided labs. You're going to have advanced, or you can have advanced and guided within one interface, and you have challenge labs. You have a lot of different avenues to try to get information across, and all that flexibility makes it a very strong platform.
Yeah, absolutely, and it also makes it flexible for you as the instructor, but it certainly makes it more flexible. It makes it flexible and achievable by the students, because the students get the ability to be able to sort of choose their own adventure a little bit. Particularly if you have a look at, say, the like the new community courseware that we've got, like where we do that testing up front, where we say, hey, what basically what do you know, and then based off what they know to start off with, we'll make a choice for them. We'll say, hey, look, you should be doing the step-by-steps, right? Or you should be doing the little bit more sort of like the more advanced version of the instructions. The instructions are still the same, or the outcome's still the same. It just guides them along the way, but then the students can override that, of course, and say, hey, actually, no, I want to be able to do, like I want to be able to have my adventure as being more step-by-step, or more, the more sort of high level steps to be able to go through. So but yeah, it's giving that sort of change and that flexibility to be able to do that. And then in the community course where as the instructor you get an additional view where you can actually change between the modules for the instructions without having to actually go out and come back in to in through the lab or relaunch the lab, but being able to actually just simply say, right, I want to grab the steps for module 3 or module whatever, so that you can then do your work for your demos as an example and put that in place without losing that by skipping into a different module. So it's those sort of things that I think that from an instructor perspective we keep on, like it makes our life easier. And I think it's the difference, well, not the difference, but it's certainly a benefit of having folk who have actually been instructors or are actually instructors being part of that process, because kind of we give that feedback of actually this is probably a better way to do that, so, or this is like in the real world when you're in a classroom, this is what it looks like. So Rod, I'm curious from an instructor perspective, have you done much in the way of remote training as an instructor?
Yes, and that's kind of really did a lot more of it, obviously during COVID, and such pretty much changed how we did things. And biggest issue we had was the interactivity with the user. You don't know what they're doing, how they're doing it. So we had to kind of modify that a little bit and do a little bit more on the hands-on demo side. So whether using whiteboard or a secondary camera to kind of show some hardware that we're looking at or referring to different sites. But we also found that we kind of don't give the student everything when it comes down to certain things. So we may do not quite capstone style, but we'll ask them, hey, how would you do this, without giving them steps on how to do it. And so that brings them more interactivity, and also having a team concept to where you have a team lead, and then that team lead works with other people on that team to kind of come out with a resolution. So that kind of increased interactivity and lowered the boredom factor, because IT is so enthusiastically received, but it also just gets people also thinking, because the trick to learning anything is not what you learn necessarily, it's how you learn it. And so if you can get that kind of keyed up and everyone's on that same page, then you learn a lot better, learn faster.
Yeah, and I think the challenge that I always find with doing remote training, and this is like going away from from just the hands-on component, but just as a general sort of instructor sort of item, is making sure that everyone's actually on the same page from a knowledge perspective. Like it's a little bit, it's far easier in the classroom to be able to sort of glance around and see people who are nodding off, or who are confused by a particular who are confused by a particular subject. But in a virtual environment, it's a little bit harder to be able to do that, like to be able to get that one-to-one sort of feedback that we get as instructors. So I'd be curious, and I'm going to open this up now to the folk that have joined us. Is there anything that you've that you would share or that you could share as to if you've been doing things like remote training, what some of the techniques are that you've actually used to be able to keep people engaged? Is there anything in particular that you've used? Do you use quizzes? Do you pause and ask questions of people that are joined? Yeah, Chrissy, do you want to come off mute?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. What I've done in the past is, and it's a little bit of a conflict with what we're doing now, is in a virtual classroom, I have my students work on one set of files from beginning of day to end of day, so they see a progression through that file and actually see things get applied. So that keeps them engaged, and they're never falling into a sit back and watch modality. They're always engaged. They're doing everything the same time I am doing it. So basically the entire class is the lab, the example, so to speak.
Okay. And then, do you find so are you dealing with like in the apps training? Are you dealing with end users, or are you dealing with like sort of the administrators of those of the apps, or is it mainly end user type training?
That's the thing, end user. So my clients are often government people, and the apps courses are a little bit different in the sense that you're actually teaching a lot of computer literacy skills while you're doing this. So most of the time, what my students get out of these is because they've all had their hands on Word, PowerPoint, Excel. It's the tips, it's the tricks, it's the demystifying of the programs. Like, for example, Excel. I don't teach specific functions. What I do is I teach how functions and formulas are constructed, and then the students have the ability to just simply plug in cell references and data to other functions that they find off, say, the Microsoft site, their master list.
Sure. Okay. That's and I think it's a different yet similar approach to doing the full sort of like technical training, right? Because you've got you've got an expectation of, like, as you said, like, you're doing a lot more of that computer literacy type thing, where in a technical training environment, you would expect that people would come in, being far more confident with and too oftentimes too confident with being able to use the environment with the computers and that sort of thing. Whereas you've got to kind of you're lifting that part of it at the same time. So okay.
One other thing I would recommend to every instructor is either get a touch screen computer or get yourself a Wacom tablet, because students get incredibly engaged when you write on the screen. It makes them feel like they're looking at an in-person course. I try to avoid PowerPoint as much as possible because death by PowerPoint.
And that's a really good tip. Like sort of and being able to do that interactivity of having the handwriting as well. I think it engages people a little bit more as well, because you can then start doing more of that sort of diagramming and that sort of thing, which you kind of can't really do if you're just presenting a slide, right? So like that's
even simpler than that, just circling the command on the tab and ribbon, because I have every class I have students that don't know how to use the interface. Also, every single class I teach, no matter which level, teach the tab and ribbon. Tab groups command. It will make your life easier.
Okay, I'm going to take that away as a tip for today as well. Thanks, Chrissy. All right, anyone else? Anyone else have they want to add in some suggestions? All right. Well, I think as we've kind of progressed, and obviously, we go back a couple of years, like pre-COVID sort of times, I think there was probably less of a push for doing that sort of that remote training and that thing. So we all kind of had to learn new skills. I remember I was probably about 15 years ago, I attended a course that Microsoft ran to be able to do remote training, and I thought at that point it was like, this is like a brilliant idea. And basically, at that point they were certifying instructors to be able to do remote training, but it was remote training for particular courses to be able to do, and it kind of got put by the by at the time. I think technology then caught up, which is where basically where we ended up, in the beginning of 2020. thank goodness that we had that ability to be able to sort of to pivot. Otherwise, I think a lot of instructors and also businesses and that sort of thing would have suffered even more than what they would have from a business perspective, like putting aside any of the personal items and that sort of thing. So. Okay, yeah, so okay, well that's some good tips, and thanks very much, Chrissy, for sharing that. Do appreciate it. Anything else, Rod, that you wanted to add in before we move on?
Now, just kind of tag along with the, using your pen or using something on that. It also just adds a little bit more credibility, because if you can freehand something, a diagram or anything like that, that tells you you're not reading something, you're just knocking it out. And so I found that does add quite a bit to it. That's
true. I will also say, and I think Chrissy's idea of having like the Wacom tablet or a touchscreen is great. And personally, I have one of my laptops I present from, I do have it as touchscreen. I've got a pen, so I do draw directly onto it. I do have a desk setup that has a Wacom tablet. I use it every now and then, but I'm still not quite used to it. I haven't used it enough to be able to get completely used to it, but I'm quite good with my mouse drawing. So not my mouse writing, yeah. If I'm trying to write things, not so great. But I can draw diagrams quite well now with mouse pointer. But I would certainly I know that it makes it far easier if you do have a touch screen or a pen or something like that to be able to operate through. So certainly if you're doing if you are doing remote training, having that investment in some of the other, some of those things which if you're doing classroom, you've got a whiteboard, so who cares, you don't need it. So but if you're doing remote training, it's doing some investment in a few things, right? So it's things like investing in the setup of the tablet or something like that. A good microphone is also a part of that as well, if you're doing that. So and it's an investment, because you're sitting and you're going to be talking to people. A good camera is also a good part of it. So I've got a camera. The camera that I've got set up at the moment, I've just rebuilt my machine, so I don't know if I've actually got all the software included in it as to whether it's actually going to do this or not. But it actually does physically move with me. So it's a tracking camera. So it means that I can kind of move around a little bit. There are some secret commands that you can do with hands to be able to make it do things as well, and focus and move around as well. I've also personally on the desk that I'm at, I've got a standing desk. So it's one of those sit-stand desks. So when I'm presenting, I always stand up, because that's how I did in if I'm doing in a physical classroom, I'm standing up. And I know that some folk are more comfortable sitting down doing presentations, that sort of thing. So basically, you just got to make sure it's a space that you're comfortable in doing presenting with. I also have some lights that I've got set up. So I've got some external lights that I've got set up onto here, mainly because it helps to improve my look and complexion. Ashley's laughing. That's fine. And then and then I've also I have invested in one of those stream decks, so you can actually use that to be able to switch. So what I've got, and I've set that up for a few different items. I've got it set up for Teams, so that I've got things like shortcuts for sharing, for stopping for turning on and off the microphone, and turning on and off the camera, so that you're not sort of trying to find it and go, oh, well, what do I do? Where do I click? And moving mouse around, that's the thing to be able to do it. There's I've just got the deck that I can put that through. As well as that, I took some time to set up some shortcuts for there's particular web pages that I always go to. So I've got some of those URLs tagged in, so then I can then say, right, I rather than having to start typing things in or anything like that, if I say, right, well, let's open up this page, I can press the button and it opens the page up for me. So it's little things like that as I said, it's an investment. It's all money that you have to put out to be able to get up and running. But by doing it, it then makes this sort of experience a little bit, not easier, but a little bit sort of more comfortable, I think is probably what it is. There is a friend of mine, so some of you might have come across a Microsoft instructor. He's also a regional lead, Tiago, who Tiago has If you have ever have a look at his setup is amazing with what he's got set up. Like he's got multiple screens. He's like multiple screens. He's got all the lights set up. He's got specialized cameras. He has the pretty sure he's sponsored by Elgato now because he has so much of their tools and that sort of thing. But if you he his presentations, he is really super confident with regards to how he does his online sessions, right? And so I always use him as sort of the reference point of this is how you would present online. I saw something the other day, and I haven't really experimented into it yet, but that was the idea of having one of those smart displays and using that as one of your, not as a secondary display as such, but as an additional display for things like, say, for instance, putting timers and clocks and that sort of thing in. So you've got using that as part of the sort of the work, your workload. And one of the things that I always find with doing remote training more than necessarily in classroom training, you have, as I said, you have that immediate feedback, right? Where you have the folk who are looking at you, and you can tell when they're getting to the point of, oh, I've had enough right now, and you can call a break, right? And obviously, if you're presenting for a whole day, I always if you're doing it in person, you always have that contract of this is when we're going to take our breaks, so that people go, I know when that break's going to be. And I do the same thing when I'm doing online training, but I shorten down the sessions. So I think having the 2-hour session before you have a break, which we might get away with in person, doing it in this sort of style, that's a long haul. I generally have, if I'm doing a 3-hour session or day session or whatever, I'll have breaks regularly. We'll have a 5 or 10 minute break at each hour, just to give people a chance to be able to get away from the screen, to be able to turn off for a bit, go grab a coffee, that sort of thing that they might need. So I think that sort of thing is also something to bear in mind. That's a different modality, so therefore there are some of those sort of things we need to consider, because you can't see when people are starting to nod off, right? And so changing some of that sort of thing up. Rod, have you done any of that sort of change when you've done the difference between in person and online? Or
unlike you, I kind of tend to stand because that's what I'm used to, but I've also having those breaks here and there, and also having just kind of moments where people can interact a little bit, because going from being completely silent, sitting in your chair, to having to talk to someone, that does kind of give you a little bit more energy and wakes everyone up. And it's going to go back to the tool set and that you might have also is emulators, whether it's a fall simulator or one where you can share your mobile device. I use Samsung Flow quite a bit, especially when it comes down to those areas where we're talking about mobile devices in instruction. And it used to be that people kind of avoided that topic or made that a bonus you could do on your own. But now that you can emulate that, you can show it and talk about it, folks actually kind of perk up. Says, oh, I can do this with my device. Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. So it's not one of those things you just take off and just hope you do it on your own. So you do have that way to jump up and actually do it, and they see it, and it's really, live action, and it kind of perks it up, and it also bolsters that topic that you're teaching.
Yeah, that's true. And then and so adding that in becomes more of a adds it into your tool set to be able to work with. I like it. And as well as that, so say for instance, on the Microsoft side of the fence, things like, say for instance, doing Intune demos and that sort of thing is very hard. We set up all these policies and we go, they'll work when you get to a mobile device, and and then, but being able to do things like use emulators or even I've got a couple of devices that I can do screen sharing of the device on. So you actually have the live environment, so you can actually see them when they're coming through, so you can push things out to it and that sort of thing. And it just does add that little bit of interactivity. And I think even regardless of what the modality of training is, that's also that's a good way to be able to do it as well. Having a a device, if you're actually holding up the physical device and going, look what I can do, that's really hard for a classroom to see. So using some of those emulators is a good idea. The other, so this is not really for classroom training as such, but it's something that niggles at me when I'm in a most recently I was at an event like the Microsoft event for Ignite. So I was in in the instructor led areas in there, and one of the things, so it's a large room, right? So this, again, shifting is directly different from doing traditional sort of classroom training or online training, that sort of thing. But it was a large room, had 60 people, I think was the largest room that we had there. In that 60-person room, there was one of the presenters who, obviously very confident with his own voice and presentation, that sort of thing, was asked, "Do you want to have a mic for this?" And he's like, "No, I'm fine." And it was, there was people in the room already, and he's like, "So, people up the back, can you hear me?" And they're, of course, "Yeah, we can hear you," because there was only a couple of people in the room at that point. So he's like, "I'm fine," because big booming voice and that sort of thing. And then when we got to the actual presentation, once the room was full and there's that sort of general hubbub of everything else that's going on, people at the back could not hear him. So, ended up sort of turning off. So my general piece of advice, if you have a room where you're offered a microphone, or if and so obviously, if it's a classroom and you've been offered a microphone, there's obviously a reason for it, because it's probably recognized as being noisy and needs to have it. Obviously, if you're doing online, you have to have one. But if you're doing like a larger presentation or a larger session and you're offered a microphone, always say yes. Even if you're not confident with it, with how to use it, that's the thing. You'll get confident. You're an instructor. You gain confidence by doing things anyway. So yes. So I would excuse me. Always say, grab the microphone, put it on. So because you make life far easier for everyone else that's in the room, and it's not just about your voice. And also, don't shout if you do have a microphone, which is the other mistake that I have seen is people who do have a microphone for this first time, and they are used to being that booming presenter that has to can fill the room with their voice, and then they get given a microphone, and for the first 2 minutes or so, they're like, "Okay, yeah, I know that I've got a microphone, I'm presenting quietly," and then it's like, "Hang on a second, there's people up the back there that can't hear me, so I'm going to start projecting more." And then you have an audio person in the back who's like madly fiddling with all the controls to be able to bring things back down again. So a little bit of an odd aside, but just an observation that I because the people that were presenting were they're instructors in their own right. So it was just one of those odd things. All right. Okay. So, well, thank you, Rod, for that. I really appreciate your thoughts and joining us, and thank you, Chrissy, for jumping in with some additional information or additional thoughts in there as well. Really do appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on then to some of the instructor offers that we have available. So we do have instructor offers available for if you're an MCT or if you're also an AWS certified instructor. We have, if you're an MCT, you have access to obviously the mock lab access, so you have access to all of those. You can sign up, and I'll put up the page in a moment to where to actually go to be able to get to it. But you can sign up to be able to get access to all of the content, particularly if you're a contract instructor. That's a really handy thing to be able to use. It's free access to be able to prep for classes. You don't have to be, stay within your lane as such. You can go outside and use this to be able to prep for outside of what your content might be. Obviously, if you're a full-time instructor and you're assigned a class, then you get access to it anyway. But this, even if you're a full-time instructor, not a contractor, you can still sign up for the free access. So then you have access to all of the labs. And I do recommend doing that. Again, so you can actually pull other content in. So, I've done that before where I'm talking about something and I go, oh, actually, I know that the topic that we're talking about is covered in a lab in a different course. So I might fire up that lab. So I've already got like a pre-prepared environment that I can then demonstrate from rather than having to rebuild everything. As well as that, the other offer that we have for the MCTs as well as for AWS instructors is what we call our All Access Pass. So with the All Access Pass, that is the All Access Pass to our Challenge Labs. So the Challenge Labs are our now over 1,000 labs across all sorts of topics, as we'll mention in our sort of roadmap shortly. But yeah, it goes across, obviously Microsoft content, AWS, VMware, cybersecurity, coding. There's all sorts of different content that's in there. So you can use that to be able to expand out your knowledge, right? And be able to sort of, hey, this is something I think has come up a couple of times in a class where I've had someone who's asked this question and I don't know what the answer is. So I'm going to go in and learn a little bit more about it. And that does have some badging, and that's something that'll go along with that too. So as you start completing through the various different levels, the different parts of the Challenge Labs, you'll get some badging that will issue around that. In addition to that, depending on which exams you're going to take, it's a really handy sort of exam prep tool as well. So there is, there's lab environments which are similar to the sort of lab environments you might find within some of the Azure or the AWS type exams, which now have that sort of that hands-on content as part of the exam content. So a really good prep tool for you as well. So both of those, as I said, free access or like for those. In addition to that, just to kind of mention our instructor recognition as well, and some of you may have already received some of these where we actually do some badging. So the badging around classes as well as students. So that would be, the number of classes that you've presented, the first class, the first 10 classes, 25, 50, etc. And then also the number of students that you've presented to as well. So we do recognition at a couple of different levels. We recognize obviously organizations and what the organization does for what they're scheduling, but we also do recognize the fact that the people, the folk that are in the room are also really important for for the student experience. So we have that badging for our instructors too. So keep an eye out for those as you start presenting more and more, and as you start seeing more students in your classes, you'll also see some of those some of that content start coming to you as well. To be able to enable the features, in order to sign up for the MCT lab access as well as the all access passes, find your way across to skillable.com/offers and sign up there. Now, depending on which offer you take up, we may ask you for some additional information. Say for instance your MCP ID as an example for the MCT content, so that we basically we know we're giving it to we're giving that access out to MCTs, and we do the same thing for AWS. We'll ask you to prove a little bit who you are as to what your level is. So make sure you do take that up. It is completely free, as well as that extends into the classroom as well. So we do, you can use it for being able to prep for classes, but on our platform there's also no charge for the instructors on our platform as well when you're actually presenting. So therefore, as you're presenting, you'll get access to that as well. And thanks, Kristen, for putting in the link. All right, another item, and I might put Ashley on a little spot here. Ashley, is there any big news to be able to share for what's coming up?
So thanks, Kyle. I do have my tapping shoes on, so I will. I really won't. So I just want to say, so good to see so many new faces out here that I haven't seen before. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the Challenge Labs product manager here at Skillable, and Kyle obviously did a wonderful job along with Rod talking about how Challenge Labs can be different and used, let's say just in obviously instructor-led events, but also in the notion of pre and post assessments as well. So we currently have, out of that all access pass that Kyle just mentioned, almost 1,100 Challenge Labs that are available now, and you can see the different areas listed there. We are constantly releasing as well as refreshing Challenge Labs on a monthly basis. Your All Access Pass will come, like say, or I should say, those challenges will actually be auto-renewed, or auto-renewed, but auto-released as they become available. So in particular, we are going to, I just now realized the screenshot I probably gave you her, Kyle, a little older. I'm just now looking, I'm like, August, wait a minute. So
let me see if I can
updated map.
I did actually update it, and then it got changed at some point. So
so
there you go. That's the.
Sorry.
There you go.
It's not my fault. I was just like, that's weird. So for the remainder of this year, but I also want to say certainly looking at 2023, we're going to be kind of delving into DevOps in both the AWS and Azure spaces. Always cybersecurity is such an interesting spot for everyone. So again, a couple of different flavors. Obviously, I'll even say we're going to do, again, Azure and AWS security, but then again, focusing a lot on the cyber security. So again, what tools are available, what monitoring and so forth are out there. So those are items that we are going to be excited to release. And I'm so putting the pressure on us and our platform team. We're also going to be excited to announce in 2023 another cloud platform. So Google Cloud Platform. We have on the horizons of releasing as well. So
you heard it here first, folks.
So I would like to say, as Kyle mentioned, and again, Kristen popped in the chat, if you do not have access to Challenge Labs, by all means, let us know. We know in particular for instructors, certainly, like I say, you're hearing the latest, the greatest, depending on how you want to spend it. And we need to know, like say, in particular, if there's a certain topic that you can't find materials on, or that you would be like, oh my gosh, it would be so awesome if I could have a pre-provisioned lab that could cover XYZ demo for, like say, your demo purposes, or even to give your customers, as students, additional hands-on practice. We would love to hear that. Again, my favorite thing is you guys are getting exposed. Don't kill me for saying this, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right. And so we definitely want to be there to assist with you when it starts to go to a little bit of the bad and a little bit of the ugly. Let us take that on, and like I said, let us know what areas, like I say, we can help support for sure. So how's that?
That's perfect. All right. So just one other thing to make mention of is just so, as of obviously the end of September, the SkillPipe mock courseware license was no longer orderable. So therefore, your students no longer have like SkillPipe content to be able to work through. So instead, you need to use the MS Learn content and MS Learn courseware. Now, obviously, there's pluses and minuses for that, and that's the thing. On the latest MCT town halls, and that's the thing. There's certainly been feedback that's been given to Microsoft around that, so we won't belabor that point. However, what I will say is that there is the ability, and there has been for quite a while, to be able to leverage off some integration to be able to come in from Skillable across into the MS Learn courseware to make that journey a little bit easier. Because I think at the moment, depending on how you're doing your training, that's the thing, that can be quite sort of disjointed from an instructor, like from a student perspective. Now, obviously, as instructors, we know that, but it means that sort of we can pull that in. So that does need to be enabled to work, to have that work. So there is some work that needs to happen to in order to make that fully the full integration. In particular, that's for things like be able to do the KPIs and that thing, which is obviously, as an instructor, we have vision of that, but as an organization that you're working with, they definitely have to be, they're definitely conscious of things like the KPIs and that sort of thing to be able to put through. So make sure that you have a chat with your operations manager about doing that learn integration. because that will be the way to be able to get you the courseware easier, or get the students courseware easier, as well as that it also means that they get a nice easy way to be able to do that final bit of the achievement, which is then where the KPI comes in. So that's how Microsoft measure the organization and what they're doing with the content. So yes, so just make sure, as like, and it's been there for a while, but it, making sure that that's enabled, ready to go, or making sure it's enabled for your students to make that journey easier. All right. So in our last couple of minutes before we sort of run out of time, is there any, just throwing it open to open discussion, is there anything that anyone wants to have a bit of a quick chat about, or bring up, if there's something that you want to give us some feedback on, or alternatively, if there's just something as an instructor you want to, now you've got a chance for some other instructors in the in the virtual room to be able to nut out some things or anything like that, to kind of move that open as an open environment. May not happen. I'll allow some silence. Gary's laughing at me. I can tell. I can see.
I doubt you could solve the problems that we have.
Well, Chris, yeah, like as a long-term MCT, I realize that we have multiple problems.
Yes, we do.
Yes, yeah. So obviously, there's some things that we can do from our side, but there's some things that do need to be worked on from the Microsoft side, as always, right?
They need to bring courses back. They need to bring courses back for trainers who used to teach those courses and now have nothing to teach. People who teach Exchange, people who teach SQL. That's what they need to do, Microsoft. I mean, it's all very well having an environment to teach them in, but you need the courses. And they've cancelled all these courses and there's nothing to replace them. If you're an SQL course trainer, there is one course.
Yeah, so that's where I know from our side, you're right from the Microsoft perspective that Microsoft have said there's no longer any official sort of content along those lines. That's where at least from our side, that's where our community courseware has come in. Now, community courseware is full course, so it has content, it has content for you as the instructor, so presentation material. It also has courseware for the students.
I agree. I'm not knocking it, but have you ever tried to teach Blue Buffalo courses? Yeah.
So the community courseware that we have that we've developed, I will definitely stand behind that.
Okay.
And that does cover across. I know we do have we've got 2 SQL courses. Ashley's giving me the I'm assuming that's what the 2 fingers were for.
Yeah, but I as an SQL trainer, I want to teach an Transact SQL course. I want to teach an admin course. I want to teach an integration services course. I want to teach a reporting services course, an analysis services course, and the developers course. And none of these exist anywhere. Well, there does exist a Transact SQL course, but it's a 2-day course, which is rubbish, I think is the word I'm looking for.
Right. So I guess, I think from my perspective, because I know that there's some things that that certainly, because my knowledge lives on the IT pro side of things, so therefore more of management and admin of operating systems, etc. So for me, I see a big hole for things like, say, for instance, the System Center products, right? They've disappeared, but they're still being used.
But meanwhile, lots of trainers are leaving. That's the point. Lots of trainers are stopping being trainers because the courses that they used to teach no longer exist. There's nothing for them to teach anymore.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've done, that I know I've done internally, is I've actually given feedback about, hey, these are things where there are holes in courses, because from a sales perspective, if we're being totally honest, that becomes an opportunity. But obviously, there's investment that's required in that. So what we need.
It sounds like I really need to say this to a Microsoft person rather than yourself, but I just want to let you know. For example, I, as a trainer, used to be able to train PowerShell. I've trained a lot of PowerShell. Yeah. And the requirement was that you were an MCT. Then they changed it and said you need to be an MCSA 2016 or something in the competencies. Then
Yeah.
when they got rid of all the courses, they said you need to be an Azure Administrator Associate. Yeah. So I went and sat the exam for the Azure Administrator Associate, and you know that there was not one question in the exam. I passed it, of course, you know, there was not one question on PowerShell in it. And yet I had to pass that to teach PowerShell. Go figure.
Yeah, so I would say that that's the pool of questions that you got on there. Like I certainly did have PowerShell questions when I did mine.
Did you?
So
Lucky
yeah.
you. I was sitting there thinking, why am I getting asked all about Azure and everything? And the truth of the matter is that the people who send me where I go to train, you know, in the UK anyway, here at least, you know, the likelihood of you getting an Azure, somebody coming up with an Azure inquiry is somewhere between 0 and 0%, somewhere there about that likelihood. And yet Microsoft has got Azure this and Azure that and everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think they've kind of misinterpreted the market completely.
Yeah. I you know, I can't disagree with you. I can't argue against that. So but yeah, like so what I can suggest though is if there are particular holes that you like, there's technologies that you go, right, I'm getting a lot of demand for this, right? And I see that there's a big demand in the market for it. Then let us know what they are and what sort of things you would expect from it. And then and I'm not going to say that you know you're immediately going to get a course or even guarantee you will get one, but the more that we get that information, then obviously, because it's an investment from our perspective to be able to create those courses, time and effort, that's the thing. So you know,
you like to host those courses so that if they existed but they don't, and then just not replacing them.
Yeah, but what I mean is that, like, say for instance, the community courseware that we create, we also have, like, you know, we invest time and effort into making those. So therefore, if I can see that there's a justification, I know that there's going to be, you know, this amount of demand for whatever that course is, then that's a far easier argument to be able to have internally about, we should actually focus on doing that course or doing that topic. So
well, we used to be able to give delegates the ability to download the Microsoft companion software, you know, including the exercise files and the PDF for the demos and things like that. That website has gone. Somebody else is hosting it somewhere else, you know, but that's through their own money, their own hosting site and everything. But the new courses, the AZ, for example, the new PowerShell course, let's just talk about it, AZ040, which is hosted on Skillable. I'm teaching it, but there is no place where you can download the exercise files. I know that they are similar to the previous ones, 10961C, which was the course before that. But the point is, there is no place where you can download those exercise files. The only way I can figure out that you can download them is to log on to the virtual machine in AZ04, log on to your mail inside the virtual machine, download them from inside the virtual machine by sending a mail to yourself from inside the virtual machine. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Out of the virtual machine, and it's like there's no place where you can get the exercise files anymore. Not on Microsoft, not on Skillable.
The like that particular one. So the AZ104, the files for that.
040 PowerShell, administering PowerShell.
Okay. Yeah, I would suspect it's probably
inside the virtual machine, and they're there on the E drive. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think from memory, with that, is one of the first things you do is actually click the button that says download the files.
No, but where?
No, I'm saying like in the like because I don't have 100% familiarity with that particular one.
I'm sure that other people will agree with me that you teach a course on Skillable, you can go into the virtual machine, and normally on the E drive or the D drive, I mean in the AZ040 there is a mistake on the exercise files because they're actually they're on the E drive when if you go into the exercise files themselves, they refer to a D drive that doesn't even exist. But anyway, that's another story. But the point is, if you're teaching another course, I can imagine that they have an all files drive somewhere. It's either D or E, and that's where the exercise files that used to be downloaded from the companion site, you could download, but that doesn't exist anymore. So the only way to get those files, the up-to-date ones, is to email them to yourself from inside the virtual machine.
So if this is the one you're referring to, right? This is the AZ040.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
So So we pull it from the repository that Microsoft have, which is the GitHub repository. So
But
the all
you-
files is where all the files are.
You can get them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're 100%, because that's where we pull them from. Like we don't hold them internally. They get pulled from within there. This is a publicly facing site.
It would be great if they just had a simple download where you could just a link to download them all rather than module by module.
I'm giving you what's available. Sorry,
Yeah, no,
Chris.
I understand. That is helpful. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. You know, it would be helpful if they I say they because I don't think it's Skillable's fault. Do you know?
No,
what I mean?
well, so it's not like the content that we have comes from Microsoft. So and like that's for the official content for the Microsoft official courseware.
Like
all of that content is back
the other
into
guys
GitHub.
here if I'm having a moan. Yeah, it sounds like I'm having a moan, but I think we've got something to moan about. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
But
and
so
somebody's got to say it, and if it's not me, it will be somebody else.
You bring up a good point though, because like say like this GitHub repository has actually been around for ages. Like this exists, and this has existed for quite a while. So that's not new. And in fact, let's see if
I know it might not be new, but I wasn't unaware. I was unaware that they were
yeah,
maintaining an up-to-date version. Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to send them a errata because the exercise files in there are wrong.
You don't even have to send them an errata. You can actually fix it yourself. That's the beauty of the GitHub, right? Is you can actually come into here.
The point is module 6 and 7 refer to a drive that doesn't even exist in the exercise files. When you go into the Skillable, that doesn't exist. It refers to a drive called D:/all files in the exercise files, and there's only an E drive, and the label of the drive is all files, not a subfolder. Yeah, so the exercise files are actually wrong. And when you try to run them, they will always fail in the course. But I know that. Yeah.
So again, you can like as an MCT, you can go and contribute to this, and that's what Microsoft's idea of publishing these things out was that you can actually go and contribute changes to it, and therefore have that saved in as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And notice in the course code that they've got AZ there, but it's got no Azure. They've introduced a module, 2 modules in it, which people turn around and say, Chris, well, we'll do it, but have you got anything else as well? Because most people I know don't want to know anything about Azure.
Right. Well, it's kind of. I think it's Microsoft's way of the future, whether we like it or not. And eventually we'll all get there, possibly.
When they start losing money because they wonder where all these people who are doing their courses have gone, and then they might change their minds, eh?
I think. Well, yeah, I'm thinking that might be hopeful, Chris.
But God loves a trier.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, we are slightly over time, but I think so, Chris. I think like that you brought up a really good thing, which is a resource that has been around for a while, but obviously isn't well published if an MCT doesn't know about it. So but yeah, so that the repository that the Microsoft have in GitHub, we just copy that out, and I'll put that in, paste that in. That's actually the repository for all of the Microsoft official courseware. So for the content for the labs, for the labs, and all those files and that sort of thing all live within there. So yes, that's good. That there was a good fruitful discussion. So all right. So let me just jump into here. So do make sure that you connect with us. We do have a feedback portal. So if there's something that's troubling you, or if there's courses like say for instance that you like that Chris has suggested there's a need for, put that into the feedback portal and we'll put that through. Chrissy, you've got a question?
Did you say me? Did you mean me?
No, Chrissy.
No, me.
Right, sorry. Yeah.
See, I'm a little bit of the black sheep in the family here because I guess I'm under Global Knowledge Canada, and we basically have a SharePoint site where we can view the instructor material, and it's not great. The material that we have, we were instructed that we were to switch to using the files that are provided to the students from the book courseware. Now, the books, I've opened up a number of them. The PDFs based off of the books have no bookmarks whatsoever. So as an instructor, I'm constantly jumping back up to the table of contents in the PDF and trying to find a section. The other thing is the material in the actual courseware for, say, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. It is woefully out of date for the current modalities. For example, in Excel, they have the lookup function, not VLOOKUP, lookup. And if you go to the Microsoft website for the lookup function, it literally says, do not use this function. Tables. Tables are treated as lists. It's basically select and that's a table. Now you can filter it. No talk about structured references. Word is still taught as if it's a typewriter, not talking about styles, outlines, structures of files. And I get where it comes from. Every time there's a new generation of Office, they just simply go in, polish up the book, change the version numbers here and there. I have literally found references to old menus. Insert table instead of the proper tab and ribbon. So it's actually really hard for the students because A, it's hard for them to follow in the book. The files for the course are all tiny little modular files that have no real impact on the overall view of what we're doing. So it's been really difficult getting up and running on the Office 365 modules, and the PowerPoint they gave us is literally, and I'm not joking, about 300 slides that are literally copy and paste from the book. And I cannot use them. It's death by PowerPoint. So literally that's a slide a minute for a 6-hour course. So I don't know if that's why, like, there hasn't been a lot of Office 365 courses, but I have been hearing from people, because I know so many people in Government of Canada and it's such a major client, they're shying away from global knowledge now because they're literally sitting in front of a screen and somebody is narrating a book.
Right, yeah.
So that's an issue, and I get where it's coming from. We have the material. It does seem like a good idea to make that as the common element. But for concept training, using curriculum-based material is just a shot in the foot. And we've seen how much it's dropped. Like, my bookings are down 85%. And I would not be surprised if it's because the government is turning away, and they're notorious. Like, if they don't like your material, you're gone for the entire department. So just my feedback.
Yeah. Well, like I guess like that seems like it would be an internal argument to have as to where that content's actually come from and who can actually work with it. But certainly it's good. It's good for us to know, because that's obviously things that we need to keep in mind as to how we do our courseware design. But I know that certainly the courseware that we work on doesn't have that look and feel. Like, I think we'd have a lot of people who would be very upset if we did a 300 slide PowerPoint deck. All right. Well, we are well and truly over time now, but I do thank everyone for their participation. It's been a really good session, so I do really appreciate it. And we will have another one of these next month. We'll send out the invite for that and the details for when that's going to be on. But my goal for that one is that we're going to have a look ahead for what's coming in the next year. So sort of the unwrapping the things for unwrapping the Christmas presents for the next year. So thank you very much for joining, and thank you for your time. We'll see you in the next one.